Hello everyone and welcome to Talk Time Africa. Thank you for joining us. Hey Jay, how are you?
Hey Nikki, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Love the new hairdo.
Different faces of Jay.
All right, going sexy on us. Well, today on the show we have a friend and a sister joining us for this conversation. She's been with the Talk Time Africa family before. She's Valerie Mills. Welcome, Valerie. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Well, you do look regal as usual.
Thank you so much. Portraying Africa, aren't
All
we?
right, yes we are. That's what we're all about.
Yes, we are.
So today on the show we want to talk about a subject matter that is close and dear to our hearts. April is the month that the National Child Abuse Awareness or Prevention Month is celebrated, and we just wanted to have a conversation about child abuse in our community. And so we're going to start off with what constitutes child abuse. According to the CDC, any act or series of acts of commission or omission by a parent or caregiver that results in harm, potential for harm, or threat of harm to a child is what child abuse is. And the four major categories are neglect, physical abuse, psychological and emotional, child sexual abuse. Earlier, Jay, we were talking about neglect.
Right.
And you were talking about undernutrition, malnutrition, which one?
Well, the biggest ones that comes to my mind, and I think it's more prevalent in Africa, would be diseases and then undernutrition. And those two, to me, is no fault to the parents.
Right.
It's the standard of living, and it comes with the community, and it's just the way it is.
Right.
But it is still considered child abuse under that category.
Obviously, what leads to disease is undernutrition.
Undernutrition.
So those two do go hand in hand.
They do.
Exactly. But also to tag into what Jay said, you would also find that in situations where farming is prevalent, you find that sometimes the parents out of poverty would keep the children out of school to work on the farms. That is also a form of neglect, because then you're asking yourself, where do you see that child later on in the future without an education? So that is also another thing that would constitute some kind of child
That
abuse.
falls under child labor too, doesn't it?
Exactly,
It's one of them too.
exactly.
Child labor.
And Valerie, we were talking about ILO earlier also.
Yes, well, this one zooms in really on sex workers. It talks about 60% of sex workers in Italy are from Nigeria, unfortunately. And then it talks also about somebody in the international, this woman, I think the name is Mira Sethi, in the International Immigration Organization, who says that it's almost as if Africa has become a supplier of fresh flesh, in quotes, for countries in the European Union via pedophile and prostitution rings. I mean, that is really alarming. And when I saw it, I was like, wow. But it so happens that for these brothels, the younger the children are, the more money they fetch the people who actually the traffickers. And then also they look at it in terms of how long they'll be able to serve them, in terms of how growing into the brothel life and giving them more money in the long run.
They can keep them longer, so to speak.
Exactly.
That
And
is
it's
sad.
pretty scary.
Yes, it is. It is.
I was reading about sexual abuse with children, and it's unfortunate that you have these young boys in Africa that gang rape against young children. And they think it's a game. Or then let's talk about incest within families on these young children, all coming under the same topic of sexual abuse.
That's
child
true.
abuse.
That's really true, Ms. J, as you were saying. And sometimes under the guise of marriage, you find these young children being pushed into marriage way before the age of the marital age. And then they get all kinds of diseases. I was reading some of them and I was like, man, vesico-vaginal fistula, which has repercussions later on in their lives. And then you've got HIV/AIDS. And the unfortunate thing is that for some of these older men who visit these brothels where the children are, they actually believe that sometimes the young virgins are a way of healing them of their AIDS. And I'm like, okay, this is the 21st century, but unfortunately it's happening in certain places.
It is. And that also can lead us to the psychological and emotional, because all of these acts perpetrated on these kids eventually will give them those psychological problems.
True.
And that leads to, the effects later on in life, psychiatric problems, anxiety, depression, acting out, leading to arrests,
Another issue that we can highlight is what has been termed termed by some writers as the modern day Cinderella syndrome, where it's domestic child servitude, and this is more prevalent in Africa. In this situation, you have people who live in the families who live in the hinterland sending their children to people in the cities with the whole idea of give them an education because we can afford to give them an education in the village. But what invariably happens is these children are then used as almost like modern day, I don't want to use that word, but they're really used as help for the house. And that help is not always complimentary because sometimes the children are too little, sometimes they are not developed enough to handle all the chores that they are, thrown at that is thrown at them. And these things actually spill down into messing up their psyche and actually bringing their self-esteem really low because they keep feeling that they don't stand, that they are not to par with the rest of the children they are with, so that even if they find themselves out of the situation, these things have repercussions later on. So that's another form of child abuse. And sometimes it's actually gone into trafficking because some of these families go on and take these children out of the country, out of like Africa, and take them to other European countries and sometimes sell them into brothels. Unfortunately, but it's a fact.
Yes, it is a sad situation. Yeah. So some of the resources that we want to be able to put out there. But before we talk about the resources, though, let's talk about the signs. I was reading up also where it says that you cannot tell that a child is being abused unless you get close to that child, which is true. How can you tell that a child is being abused unless you can get close to the child? They act out in different ways.
Yes,
but until you're able to speak to a child, so it's very difficult to tell just by looking at a child if you're not close to that child. But then we can go on to telling our viewers about the resources that are available out there to know if you are indeed abusing a child or if you know a child that's being abused. We'll be right back.
If you suspect child abuse, we have a couple of resources for you. We have 2 website resources and a phone number. We have preventchildabuse.org, childwelfare.gov, and we also have the phone number, which is 1-800-4-A-CHILD. That is 1-800-422-4453. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. So, Valerie, any last thoughts?
I was just thinking about the discussion, and what came into my mind was a biblical text that train up a child the way he should go, and when he grows, he will not depart from it. So, I mean, this is to all of us that we should endeavor to bring up our children to be what we expect them to be and not expect the wave of a magic wand after we put the wrong things in them and around them.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us, Valerie.
Thank you. I had a good time.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Same here.
So there you have it, our conversation about child abuse and April being the Child Abuse Awareness or Prevention Month in America. Thank you for watching. Well, live your dreams, enjoy the moment. We'll see you next time.